Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone for joining us from different locations. Mary, can we start the recording, please? Okay, so my name is Tanmay, and I am the part of developer community team. I welcome you all to the webinar. In the session today, Temenos expert Shaju will present on Temenos Payments, and also during the event, you will gain basic awareness of Temenos Payments ecosystem, especially around payment initiation and electronic banking channels. We also have a couple of experts who are available to answer your questions while we do the webinar. So make sure you tuned in. And also, if this is the first time you join the webinar, there are a couple of things that I want to share. Make sure that you use Q&A panel for your questions. The panel is open. So put your queries over there, and do not use the chat window. Also, we are recording this webinar, so it will be available on Base Camp as a resource later, so you can share it with your friends or colleagues and share the link with them. In case if you see nobody, your colleagues have not joined it today, you can share it with them. So that's all from my side. I would now like to invite Shaju to take over and start the presentation. Over to you, Shaju. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tanmay. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Welcome to all to this webinar session. Myself, Shaju Ayyappan Nair. I'm a product consultant at Temenos Payments, and I will be the main presenter to this webinar. Assisting me is Venkat Balaji and Vinod from Temenos Payments. They are technical architects. Before we start, I like to have a little disclaimer that this is purely a business session and not a technical one. However, if you have any technical question, please feel free to raise them in the Q&A panel, and then we'll try to answer that at the end of the session. This is the agenda for you. Importance of API in the modern world. Overview of Temenos payments as well as the payments ecosystem. Then we will see Temenos payments and API capabilities. So to the first section, gone are the days when we thought that API is technical jargon, right? In the modern day, irrespective whether you are a developer or a business analyst, you're a marketing person, or even a CTO or a CEO, you are talking about API almost every other day. So how has it become the most buzzing word or the in thing of today's world? So this is what we'll find in the first session, first part of this webinar. So API world has transformed a lot over the past 2 to 3 decades. What has been merely a mode of data exchange between two parties to two parts of the same software now has transformed as a data exchange mechanism across applications, across different systems, across an enterprise, and across the enterprise, across organizations, and finally now it's public. There are thousands of APIs in the cloud for anybody to consume. So there has been a clear transformation from in the last few years. In its latest form, API is revolutionizing the world. It enables varied businesses anywhere in the world to embed software capabilities of other platforms within their own applications in a very easy and economic way. I want to quote an example here. Assume you want to build a taxi rental application. Okay, you don't have a taxi, you don't have the maps, you don't have a billing software, you don't have payments capability. Still, you would build something very basic, and then you would use a Google API to get the maps. You would get a payments API to get your payments service. You will get an Uber API to get your taxis and their availabilities, and you will use, let's say, a billing API to do your billings. So that's the transformation that we have today when it comes to APIs. So if you look at it as a whole, there are multiple parties involved in this game. Okay, there are these publishers who wants to publish data. There are consumers who wants to publish, who wants to consume the data and probably transform them. And then there is this end user who is making use of the data and probably paying for it. An API ecosystem is a combination of all these different parties, plus all these thousands of APIs that are out there and the associated infrastructure that is holding it. So everybody is watching this ecosystem grow, okay, and thinking, how can I be part of this? How can I benefit from this ecosystem? It does not matter what industry I am in. I could be in, let's say, shopping, food, restaurant, manufacturing, banking, logistics, whatever. Several business models have been evolved in the past few years based on API ecosystems. We'll classify them as 4. API promotes the product. Sorry, API powers the product. That's the first model. So you build a software that is powered by external APIs. The taxi rental example that I gave just a while ago, that's a very good example here. So all I had was just a basic application, but I used many APIs, such as the Ubers and the Googles, to actually power my product. The second model is API promotes the product. So this is when you offer an API that can be accessed by third parties to use your data that will generate interest in your product for consumers. The third model is API projects your product. This model is when you allow third parties to experience your product or integrate with it such that you get indirect benefits or direct benefits out of it. Open banking is one good example of this. The last one is when API is the product. This is when you build your product based on API technologies such as, let's say, API gateways or API platforms, clouds, API cloud-based hosting platforms. So given these models, okay, all businesses are starting to look everything through an API angle. Be it a change to the existing product or a new product, we are forced to think of a design that is compatible to this ecosystem. And this design thinking, giving highest priority or highest importance to API, is known as API first methodology. API first thinking has led to a lot of major changes on technical design principles. And one of the important ones is to go modular. It means breaking complex systems into smaller containerized components called microservices. Over a period of time, all these large systems that you see today, including even core bankings, including those are deployed in premises, they all probably can decompose into highly organized set of microservices in the cloud. So as a bank, you're thinking, what can I expose to derive value? An API that can list my ATMs with its addresses, all my lending products so people can see them, or shall I allow third parties to open accounts? What should I do? So here comes another challenge. Okay, how much do you expose? This is the very big question. How much do you expose? Shall I comply with minimum regulations in a very minimal form, or should I expose more, creating potentially innovative products for myself and my consumers that can boost my business? So API economy is all about this. It's about controlling the exposure of my organization's assets through APIs. In other words, it's a strategy. It's your strategy for careful management of your resources in a controlled and secure manner to utilize and leverage what's out there in the market. Finally, the USP of APIs. It's very simple, very synchronous, it's secure, and it's standard, and it's economic as well. This is the biggest USP, that it's economic. You could build sustainable models. You could build successful and sustainable models because it's economic, right? You don't need heavy infrastructure. You use the public infrastructure and you build your business. So with that, I go to the next slide. Here is a simple example. Okay, a server in the cloud exposing an API on weather information. So if you build an application, you want to show weather information, you don't go around the world and put sensors. All you would do is to actually call an API that is published by a weather station. Okay. Another example is online shopping portal using Google Maps for delivery address. So the portal is simply calling an API of Google, who will actually give the address as a map. Then you can convert that address as a map location and then do your deliveries. Not only just that, you can see there are a lot of APIs that are exposed by Google. It's on the right side. So you could make use of all of them to actually build your, take benefit for your business. There are many more examples, actually thousands of them, but I just put here some popular examples. Wikipedia APIs that allow you to publish or get contents from Wikipedia site. YouTube APIs to manage videos. So you don't have to host your video in multiple places. You can just host it one place in YouTube, and then you could publish that in multiple applications. Facebook APIs that allow photos to be shared. So I just want to quote that Instagram became so popular because of this API when Facebook started allowing them to share their photos on Facebook. I would like to go to some examples on the banking world. Here is Mr. John, who is trying to view his account statements from an internet banking site. So all he is doing, all his application is doing is to make an API request to his bank. So it's called a balance request API, let's say, and goes to the gateway of his bank, and bank is serving that with an account balance back to his device. Another example from banking world, it's about open banking. Mrs. John is shopping at an online shop, okay, and the app is actually making an API call to a third-party provider. In the open banking world, it's called a PISP, and the PISP is initiating another API to Mrs. John's bank. Mrs. John's bank makes the payment to the merchant's bank. Merchant bank notifies the payment to the merchant, and merchant is delivering the goods. So what's actually really good about this is that you have skipped a lot of intermediaries here, such as Visa and Master, and you're actually directly making a payment request to a bank. So in here, the merchant is small. That's why you need a PISP in the middle. But if you are a big merchant like an Amazon, then you can be your PSP yourself, and then there is just one party. You're shopping, you got a shopping site, and then you're directly accessing your customer's bank to make that payment. Okay, there are many more examples in the banking world. Banks offering APIs to list their ATMs. So if you got an app and you want to just help your customers to show where is the nearest ATMs, then you could call these APIs and you will get all those ATMs list to be shown on your app. API to validate billers. In the current situation, for example, you got these billers, right? Utility companies. So you have to download, as a bank, you need to download that list. You have to validate that and maintain it. Every time you make a payment, you need to validate against it. When there's a biller data that changes, you have to download that. But in Australia, the bank, you don't have to actually get that data at all. You can just validate that against a central repository to validate the biller before you make that payment. Swift has got a lot of reference data, big cent IBANs data. So you are supposed to actually download it and use it. But now Swift is providing API access to its reference data, so you don't have to have the hassle of downloading it and maintaining it in your bank. UK confirmation of pay is another example, very innovative, that today when you actually make a payment to a payee, you actually do not know if that account is valid, right? You just make the payment. If the payee's account is valid, it will come back. However, in the UK, by this scheme, as a payer's bank, you can actually validate by calling an API at the payer's bank and getting confirmation that the payee is valid. Okay, the last example is from FinTech, AISP, open banking. You as a customer holds multiple accounts with multiple banks, but you don't have a consolidated view. You can ask a FinTech, okay, who is providing some additional services. You can ask them to actually pull account statements from all of your multiple banks and consolidate them and give you something that you want. So there are these popular banking APIs, payment initiation, payment status checks, list of accounts, account statement, account balance checks, list of bank branches, list of ATMs, and so on. Okay, so APIs, there's a lot of spotlight on APIs. The popularity is growing. As you can see from my examples earlier, API-based business is going to explode in the next few years or decade. Practically every industry, not just banking, practically every industry today is going to actually be part of that. I would like to point out some examples from some examples on how APIs are going to drive artificial intelligence. All of you know that AI engines can do practically nothing without data, right? And not just data, but dynamic data. When you ask Alexa about today's weather, it cannot give an answer using static data that is residing with it from yesterday. It needs to dynamically call a weather API to give you the right answer. So no banking AI software can give you an advice to you without your up-to-date data being accessible to it. So where does all this data come from? It has to come through an API, isn't it? So this is why API is going to play a very vital role, not just in AE or in banking, also in things like Internet of Things, and any industry that you can possibly think of. The popularity is growing also because of a lot of innovations that are happening around the world. Open banking is a major one. So everybody knows open banking is changing the face of banking industry. Banks are asked to open up their systems for third parties who could serve the bank's customer in a much better way than what bank could possibly do all this while. So how does it work? It's a lot of APIs involved in this game. So banks are going to open up most of their business functions through APIs. So again, it's on the forefront of this innovation. Talking about innovation on other fronts, okay, this is from my personal experience. If I go to a visa office and apply for a visa to a foreign country, to travel to a foreign country, we have to get a lot of documents with us, right? Some of them from the bank, some of them from my employer, some of them from the government, and so on. It's very difficult and very cumbersome, isn't it? Now, what if we can simply walk into the visa's office and then you can apply for the visa with no documents at all in your hand? The visa office is simply going to call my bank's API to get my banking statement or whatever, my employer to get my organization details like my certificate of employment or their own balance sheet, call an API to the government office to get my ID verified or my citizenship ID. So it relieves me from a lot of work. That's one part, but The second part is that all these documents becomes a lot more authentic, and it all becomes so much faster to process. So this is an example of a lot of industries, actually, not just banking, but everybody, including the government, going for digitalization, and how APIs will actually help them to digitalize on their path. Another catalyst of the growing popularity of APIs is its ability to monetize. There are two types of monetization: direct and indirect. Direct is when it's simple, when you charge for every call somebody makes to your API, or say for every 10 calls that somebody makes to you. Going back to the weather example, right? If there are two weather stations giving the weather information, but one of them are almost accurate all the time, then people will be ready to pay for it, isn't it? Because it's considered premium and it's accurate. So this is direct monetization. Indirect monetization is when you generate revenue out of your own business by projecting yourself or promoting yourself through APIs. We spoke about those business models earlier. Open banking is a good example. Even though banks are giving away the data to third parties, they're actually indirectly benefiting due to the fact that customers are happy and contented. Some of the surveys that we did, Temenos did, shows that banks who have strong access to API marketplaces that allows easily integratable or pre-integrated solutions via API, they have achieved significantly lower customer attrition. Banks with strong API capabilities have 47% higher customer growth as per surveys. So what's your API strategy for every bank, for every industry? This is the question. What's your API strategy? What I try to do today is to actually tell you what API strategy is for Temenos Payments, at least to a certain extent. With that, I go to my next part of this webinar, which is about an overview of the Temenos Payments ecosystem. So first, let's see the basic entities of a payments ecosystem. Okay. First is a customer, the most important entity in the ecosystem, who is initiating the orders. He could be a retail customer or a corporate customer. He could be from a call center. He could be an agent of your bank. Anybody who is initiating a payment. Then we have front office of the bank. It comprises of customer-facing channels, such as mobiles, internet, with different flavors for corporate and retail. There is an API gateway that authenticates and authorizes, throttles the payment, throttles the request, and a set of front office business modules that does some kind of pre-processing to the payment. Pre-processing means, let's say, registering your request, performing some basic validations, such as bank validation, account validation, IBAN validations, and then seeking confirmation to customer on the payment charges that you are going to take, FX rates that you are applying to that payment, and finally confirming with the customer on the acceptance or rejection of the order. Back office is the bank. Back office of the bank is what processes the payment, which means it does the counting, the charging, the routing, the screening if there is some suspicious activity checking required, and finally distributing those payments to an external clearing or settlement system if that's required, because the end party belongs to another bank, or if the beneficiary is on your own bank, then you would process that internally as a book transfer. This is a pictorial representation of the payments ecosystem. So on the left, you've got these various customers: mobile banking, internet banking, call center, and corporates. The request comes through the channels. It comes through the gateway onto the business modules of the front office. The front office business modules does the pre-processing, as I explained earlier, and confirms to the customer that your payment has been accepted or rejected. Either way, customer walks off from the channel having got the confirmation. The front office passes the order back to the back office to be processed by the payment engine or the payment processor, and then cleared externally through the set of external layers, the last one you see on the picture, or internally if it's a book transfer. So that's the flow. Whereas on the back office, supplementing the payment engine is the core banking system, which does the account validations, funds checks, funds reservations, posting, and etc. Payments are screened by payment screening engine. There are many sources of the payment, not just the online channels that we just discussed. There are so many back office systems or mid office systems who are actually initiating payments, not just online but also offline STP based payments. Some of them like treasury, for example, or security module. Then there are internal payment feeders who are aggregating payments from corporate channels, such as batch payments, salary payments, payroll payments, or supplier payments. They're all coming in STP mode, and they're coming into the bank's back office. All these are processed by the payments engine and sent out for clearing. Then there are these middlewares that are sitting between the front office and back office. So they're the interfacing channel that they sit between the interfacing channels and the front office. They sit between front office and back office, and then they sit between back office and external clearing gateways. Now we will see a little bit advanced ecosystem. I've introduced two new entities onto it. There are slightly bit complex ones. The one is the RTP. You can see the red highlights. The RTP is a new payment scheme, okay, where payee, you can be into individual or a corporate, is requesting a payer to pay through what is called as a RTP request. This is similar to direct debit scheme, but with no preset mandates. The RTP request has to be explicitly accepted by the payer before it's paid by the payer's bank. So RTP request goes, it flows from the channel, mostly mobile, I would say, through the channels, through the gateways, to the front office, to the back office. It's processed by an RTP engine, and it goes out to an external gateway or an external service called RTP service. From there, it goes to the bank, to the other bank. The other important entity or the advanced entity is merchants on the top, on the bottom left. These are merchants. They are sending a payment order request via a third-party provider called PISP. The requests are coming to our bank because the shopper who is actually buying goods has an account with us. So we are the debtors bank, or we are the shopper's bank. We are expected to debit that account, and we are expected to credit, pass a payment to credit merchant account. That is possibly in another bank or within us. These requests come via so-called open banking service providers. That's a very complex network out there, and involves a lot of complex processes before it can come to us, such as it needs to be verified whether the third party is valid. There's a lot of security checks. We need to authenticate the customer. It's really our customer. We have to check if a customer has given the consent to do that transaction. We probably have to do some strong customer authentications. So there are complex processes involved, but ultimately it's a payment is initiated from a merchant, and we are the debtors bank, and we are supposed to process that payment. I would like to then go to the the last session where we talk about Temenos Payments and its API capabilities. First, let's look at the different types of APIs in Temenos terms. Okay. First is we got system APIs. Okay, these are purely internal to the system. They are used to exchange data between different subsystems within the same system. Example is let's say T24 Transact. Okay, we got an accounting module. Transact exposes APIs to other sister modules to validate its account or validate a BIC or an IBAN, because Transact holds the central repository of all this reference data. So these are for intra-system communication. System APIs are not accessible to any system outside of itself. Okay, and they're not documented or cataloged typically. Enterprise APIs, these are the types of APIs using which a system can expose its business functions to an external world. Okay, typically within the same enterprise. So a front office application wants to talk to back office. So back office is exposing enterprise APIs and front office is consuming it. That's a good example of enterprise APIs. Front office may want to, let's say, check balance. And the balance is in the back office. So front office calls this enterprise API to get there and get the balance information. Enterprise APIs are very important to the ecosystem and is the only way systems can communicate each other. Hence, they're well defined, they're well documented, and always well cataloged. Because they are exposing the system's inside functionality, we tend to refer them as inside-out APIs. And it's purely based on system design or system functions point of view. For instance, funds check is a system function, right? Whereas experience APIs, they are designed from customers' user experience in mind. These APIs are typically one-to-one with UI. For example, if you want to design 3 different UI screens for payment capture, one for RTGS payment capture, one for instant payment capture, and one for international, purely from a user experience perspective. Okay, you would be creating 3 different experience APIs, one corresponding to your UI, to each UI. While for the system, any payment is a payment. Okay, so hence there's only one enterprise API, let's say, which is potentially encompassing all types of payments. So there are 3 experience APIs that maps to single enterprise API internally. Because of its very nature and the purpose, most of the times experience APIs are coupled with the channels. So for instance, if bank has developed their own channels, then it is very highly likely that they have their own set of experience APIs, and then all they want to do is to just map them to Temenos enterprise APIs. So they have to just look for the catalog of enterprise APIs and then try to map them. Last is a published API. These are APIs that are associated with some kind of regulations. They are typically public, okay, and it's basically imposed by a regulator, let's say, in the interest of promoting uniform standards across an industry. Open banking is a good example, or let's say request to pay is another good example. Banks are supposed to expose such published APIs in some public form to conform to such standards, so that different external entities can call into them to access the data within the bank that are sort of legally promised under the regulation. So let's see how these different types of APIs are now placed within the Temenos architecture. So Please look at this legend on the top, on the bottom right. There are three colors, four colors here. Purple is for experience APIs. Green is for published APIs. Blue is for enterprise APIs. And red is for internal APIs. Internal APIs is quite straightforward. You can see that it's actually all between or within the back office system. So it's not coming out. Whereas the blue ones is what is actually exposing the backend functions to the front. So the blue arrows remain in the middle layer, whereas purple and green, you can see that are on the exteriors. So you can see that Temenos online channels, they're coming through experience APIs. Non-Temenos channels, let's say bank doesn't buy Temenos channel, they got their own channel. They would typically be calling our experience APIs. And the regulatory parties like PISP or merchant PISPs, they're calling published APIs. So the Temenos API framework provides two distinct tools, the Fabric and the Iris that we spoke about. Fabric is typically the front-facing one, so it holds the experience APIs and published APIs, whereas Iris, which is the holder of the back office functionality, is actually holding the enterprise APIs, or keeping the enterprise APIs. Enterprise APIs and published APIs have to be mapped to an enterprise API to actually get the intended benefit, because it's enterprise APIs that fetches data. Okay, experience and published APIs doesn't fetch data, so you have to actually map them onto an enterprise API. Now, I would like to introduce a little more detail of the Temenos API framework. You can see that I've expanded the box. Everything else remains the same, but the box in the middle, the Temenos API framework, that remains. That's expanded. In the enterprise API box, you can see there are the APIs, single payments, recurring payments, SWIFT GPI, RTP, PSD2 payments, PSD2 APIs. So all of them are hosted here. Whereas the Fabric hosts enterprise APIs. I can't name them because that's dependent on the channels. Also the published APIs, such as Berlin Group or the Open Banking, UK Open Banking, or the RTP Pay UK scheme. So these are the published APIs, and they are in the Fabric. So this is a very typical model. In fact, it can deviate in real situations, which is what I'm going to show in the next slide. So if you see, I've added a purple arrow as well as a blue arrow between Temenos online channels and Temenos API framework. This is because if you see currently, the current Temenos online channels, they directly interact using enterprise APIs. They don't use experience APIs. But it's going to change with our new GUI that is coming along. It's going to become experience APIs. Likewise, as I said earlier, if your bank has your own channels, you probably have your own experience APIs. In which case, you can directly interact with the Temenos API framework through to the enterprise APIs. So that's the practical situation. It can change a little bit here and there. Whereas on the published API side, I told you in the earlier slide that it's always the experience APIs, or published APIs, but there are third parties who are acting as external hubs. So if your bank is actually already having an open banking hub, like let's say Lux Hub, then they will do the publishing. They will host the publishing APIs. You don't have to do it. In which case, the hub can directly call the enterprise APIs of our bank. Right now, I would like to take you through some of the enterprise APIs, most popular ones. The first one is PSD2. So if you are a TPP, if you're trying to interface a TPP to your bank, and then you want to look for these APIs, which are specifically built for PSD2 purposes. So PSD2 supports the first is PSD2 Open Banking is actually asking you to support these 4 products. So we got exclusive APIs for them in the PSD2 umbrella. So those are the first 4 ones. Then there is cancel, payment order status, payment order submission. You can see the API names to the right, and then you can see the underlying T24 resource name on the last column. But if you're actually looking just for a channel integration, then you can look at these APIs, which are purely sort of system APIs. Oh, sorry, purely enterprise APIs. These are, you can see a whole lot of them: initiate, submit, amend, list the orders, get a specific order, and on. Then there are administration APIs. For example, if you want to show all the products that are supported by the bank on the channel, so that they don't go on select products which are not supported, then you can call this API get payment products and then list the products that are available. Similarly, you got get purpose code, so you don't want them to choose a wrong purpose code to be rejected later on by the back office. On continuing on the enterprise APIs, recurring orders, got some of them there. RTP related, quite a lot of them there. And this last one, Swift GPI tracker. So if your channel wants to show the GPI status, you could call this enterprise API and you will get the status. A quick look at the published APIs now. As I mentioned, we support Berlin Group open banking APIs. So we are publishing them if you'd like to use that, as well as UK open banking APIs. So those are the 4 plus 3 APIs. We support UK request to pay. That's the API and the endpoints. Now let's say your bank, you don't want to follow any standards, any open banking standards, but you want to create your own standards because you're a very big bank, or you're in a certain region, you want to actually have your own open banking standards, then you could build these published APIs. So here in this case, Duco Bank is publishing their own standards. So you can see that there is a Duco domestic payments, Duco TPP open banking payments, and then Duco PISP special merchant payments. So it's all up to your requirements to build published APIs and host it in the API framework of Temenos. So I already explained that published APIs or experience APIs, they need to be mapped to an enterprise API. So because we built enterprise APIs as all encompassing ones, so they are much bigger. But in real world, you may not need all of them. So there is always a mapping to be done, and that mapping can be done within the tool. All the enterprise APIs are actually cataloged in our catalog, in our site, so you can go through that. And there's a link available in Temenos Base Camp website to go to the catalog. So you can search with them using categories, which you see on the left, such as holdings, orders, party, product, or as tags. So if you want just payments, then you can click Payments Hub, and then it'll show all the payments related APIs. They're displayed in Swagger tool, so that's very standard. You will see something like this. And then we come to the almost the end of the session, Temenos Payments API proposition. So now you know that we got tools, right? Within our API framework, Fabric and Iris. Fabric is for hosting experience and publish APIs, and Iris is for hosting enterprise APIs. Both of them are really great and very versatile tools in their own rights. in their own areas of work, both in design time as well as in runtime. Combining this with the native capabilities of T24 and its ability to expose business functions through so-called versions or inquiries, that gives Temenos developers great cutting-edge advantages. It immensely reduces the time to create APIs, deploy them, test them, publish them as RESTful APIs. The APIs and their underlying transact artifacts, they're all semantically versioned, ensuring that updates to an existing API does not impact an earlier version. So both versions can coexist, and therefore enabling the consumer to switch to a newer version whenever they want as their requirement. Iris uses standard token-based OAuth 2.0 security. It supports open banking standards. So APIs are all documented using open banking, open API specification standards such as known as Swagger. So finally, with every evolving requirement from the market or from the regulation or from your own innovation within the bank, such as digitalization, everybody is in the constant run. Okay, and we believe that Fabric and Iris together with T24 are the greatest tools that anyone can hope for, and you can help you to conquer this terrain. Finally, a summary of the API catalog. This is not just payments, but the whole catalog for you to see. I'm not going to go explain the slide, but yeah. There ends the session. And I would like to also point out that there's an upcoming event called Scale that's happening in November of 2020. It's purely a developers meet, and it's a demo and hands-on lab on how to integrate your system, whether your channel or your front office, and initiate payments using Temenos Payments API capabilities. So we look forward for that and hope to see all of you there. And thanks for listening in. And now we can go on to the Q&A session.
Thanks, Shaju. Thank you so much for your time and the session today. I'm sure the audience today enjoyed it and taking back a lot of knowledge from your session. Before you guys leave, I want to share a few slides, and then you can take a look. Also, the Q&A panel is open, so make sure you post your questions over there, and we have panelists monitoring those questions, so they'll give you answers over there. Shaju, if you can give me access to share slides.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so once again, I want to thank the entire audience today for joining us, and it was great. And as I said in the beginning, we will post the session recording today that we've done today on Base Camp, and you can listen to it again and share it with your friends and colleagues, and to those who have missed it today. So that will be available on Base Camp from the same page from where you've registered for the event. So keep a check, and we'll post the recording very soon. What you see on my screen, as you all know by now, we are running the Global Lockdown webinar series, and we have about 7 sessions scheduled so far. We have done 2 already, and there are a few more left. So make sure you visit all of these webinars individually and register. These are all individual links, individual pages we've set up on Basecamp. So make sure you register and register to it, and you'll get the invitations, and then you can join from there. While I speak, the Q&A panel is still open, so make sure you post your questions there. We have panelists, answering your questions. Register to all these webinars, upcoming webinars on Basecamp. You can go to basecamp.temenos.com events page and register to all these webinars. Also, we are running a small initiative on Basecamp called Stay at Home Geeks. We are collating technical tech news from different sources and putting it up on one page. So while you are at home, you can explore and read about technology from the globe. So you can go to bit.ly/stay-at-home-geeks. That's the link that will take you to the page on Basecamp, and you can read about tech news. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook group where we talk about what events are coming. So there's one more place for you to know about events from Basecamp. So go to facebook.com/group/Temenos Dev Community, and from there you can you'll get the updates. Also, we have Temenos Cafe Basecamp group. This group also we post about the events and updates about Temenos. So the next webinar is on May 12th, App Modernization 101 with Google Cloud Anthos. Make sure you register, and you can go to same place, basecamp.temenos.com/events page, or you can go to homepage and see the events component on the right-hand side of the page and register to all the webinars upcoming. For past recording also, you can go to events page, and there's a drop-down that will give you the link to see the past webinar recordings. Thank you, everyone. Once again, I'm going to go on mute, but the Q&A panel is still open before we end the session. So make use of it. And in case if you have questions in future about Temenos Payments, we have a very active Basecamp forum available for you to post questions. And we have experts available 24/7 to give you answers. So make use of that in case if you have questions in future. Thank you once again. Stay safe. And we hope to see you again in our next webinars. Thank you.